Trust Once Lost, Chapter 37, Greenskeeping. It wasn't long before the CMC actually did find us.
"Are you okay, Green?"
asked Applebloom.
"I'm fine."
I said.
"Pip here was just telling me something interesting that happened at the school board meeting." "They won't pay us to get new playground equipment,"
Pip explained.
Don't say it like that."
I instructed.
"The school board, headed by Diamond Tiara's mother, is refusing to fund repairs on broken and unsafe playground equipment." Aww. "But wait, it gets better,"
I said.
"Spoiled Rich said that she wouldn't listen to a runt like Pip and that her daughter would make a much better president." "This all sounds bad, but why are you smiling?" "Because Spoiled Rich is blatantly abusing her position, risking children's safety to stroke her own ego, and she's too arrogant and stupid to hide it."
I bared my teeth.
"And I'm going to bring the wrath of the princesses down on her head."
I felt my hooves shaking slightly as I paced.
"First, I'm going to talk to Applejack. Then, I'll write a letter to Luna. Then, I'll go talk to Twilight.
I said.
Then, I'll talk to my social worker so full services are aware of the situation. I'll follow up with Luna in my dreams. Then tomorrow, I'm going to start figuring out communicating with more parents of children in the class." "Don't you think you're taking this a bit far?"
asked Applebloom. My hooves began to shake more.
"I'm going to destroy her if it's the last thing I do."
I spat.
"She's a fucking sociopathic monster, bullying a little colt in front of the whole school board. I can see where Diamond gets it from. Green, she can't keep getting away with this."
I cut Applebloom off.
"I'm going to get every one of those other fucking assholes too that stood there and let her do this. I'm going to make sure they can never do this to any pony again."
I was surprised when Applebloom grabbed my shakily gesturing forehooves.
"Green,"
she said softly.
"you're shaking like a leaf. Why don't we go back to the house?"
I wanted to scream. I wanted to kick Spoiled in her smug face. I took a deep breath, held it, and then exhaled.
"Okay, let's go." "What should I do?"
asked Pip.
"Go back to the clubhouse and tell the others that I found Green and she's okay."
When I got back to the house, I went back up to my room to plan out what I was going to do to take down Spoiled Rich. I'd have to learn more about the situation before I moved against her openly. But discussing it with Applejack and Luna seemed like a good first step. Ideally, Luna would fly down from Canterlot and go medieval on the spoiled wannabe noble. But it seemed unlikely that she would be so rash. I spent my time trying to come up with a letter I would write to her, but I was hampered with my inability to write it down. I'd have to ask Applejack if I could dictate the letter to her. I tried to read some of my books, but I couldn't focus. Ideas for how best to explain the situation to Applejack and predictions for how she might respond kept popping into my head. Dinner was a vegetable lasagna, which was a bit too firm to eat with just a fork. Coordinating my hoof grip in both hooves simultaneously to grip the knife and fork was a bit frustrating, but I managed to avoid asking for help with cutting my food. I waited for the right time to bring up the school board situation, but it never quite seemed to fit. I decided for a more oblique approach.
"I want to write a letter to Princess Luna,"
I said.
"Oh?"
asked Applejack.
"Do you want to thank her for helping find you in the forest?" "I've discovered corruption and malfeasance by a member of the school board, and I want to bring it to her attention."
I explained.
"What do you mean by that?"
asked Applejack.
"Spoiled Rich is withholding funding necessary for our safety for nepotistic purposes. And she verbally abused and humiliated a child merely because he won a student election in place of her daughter."
I continued my rehearsed lines.
"Sweet pea,"
Applejack began.
"Are you sure about this? How'd you find out?" "When Pipsqueak asked for funding to repair the playground equipment, which is broken and unsafe, Spoiled Rich berated him and tried to convince him that he would need to pay for it himself."
I said.
"I'm not going to tolerate adults bullying children, and I'm not going to allow a pony who would endanger children to stoke their own ego to remain on the school board." Sweet. "I'm going to find out why the rest of those cowards stood by and did nothing too."
I spoke over Applejack.
Watching this kind of abuse happening right in front of them!
My fork clattered on my plate as my hoof grip failed. I growled angrily. After a moment of silence, Applejack started speaking again.
I can see why you're so worked up about this, but I think you're blowing this a mite out of proportion.
Applejack placated.
I've met with Spoiled Rich before, and she's not some monster. We can just talk to her and sort things out. So she's good at pretending to be a decent pony. So is a sociopath.
I ground my teeth.
How would you feel if Applebloom got hurt on the dangerous playground equipment just because Spoiled wants her daughter to be class president, huh? Do we have to wait until a child is seriously injured before we do something about this? Oh, we mostly just don't play on that equipment because it's broken.
Applebloom said.
Damn it, Applebloom, stop undermining my points! It's alright, Sweet Pea,
said Applejack.
We'll sort this out, just sleep on it, okay? I'll talk to Cheerilee tomorrow and get to the bottom of this. Alright. Close enough. This might not be the best time to tell you, but they found a care assistant that will help you at school. So you should be ready to go to school in the morning.
Since I was going to be writing a letter to a princess tomorrow, I decided it was time to open the Royal Etiquette book. The book was either horribly out of date, or there was a side of Celestia's court we hadn't seen in the show. There were entire chapters describing the specific courtesies that one level of nobility should show to another level. But the chapter about Celestia accounted for nearly half the total pages. A countess is permitted to travel with 17 retainers outside of her own lands unless it's for the purposes of attending the court of... I reached the end of the page, realizing that I couldn't recall any of it. A countess is... I yawned. This book really needed an editor. Closing the book without bothering to mark the page, I heaved a sigh. The light switch was all the way across the room, and I'd have to get out of bed to turn it off. I imagined reaching out with my magic to flip the switch, but like before, nothing happened. Reluctantly, I got out of bed. Maybe I could ask Applejack for a bedside light. She didn't seem to be worried about me staying up at night reading. Were lamps expensive here? They didn't seem to need power outlets. Did they need to be recharged? I crawled back into bed, pulling up the covers with my teeth. Tomorrow, I'd research how lamps worked, and I was going back to school tomorrow. I didn't feel drowsy anymore. It was dark, and I felt queasy, but I decided I wasn't going to get any more sleep that night. I threw the covers off and rolled out of bed. I wasn't going to let my anxiety control me. Good morning, Granny, I called as I entered the kitchen. You're up bright and early. I couldn't sleep. Something on your mind? How much do you know about Spoiled Rich? I asked. I didn't take you for the gossiping type, dearie. When I report what she's done, it's going to make an enemy of her, I said. If I can figure out how she's likely to retaliate, it will be easier to trap her. I can't say I've ever lacked the mare. Hasn't worked an honest day's work in her life, said Granny. But I don't think she would hurt a filly. She was willing to use her power to humiliate Pip and verbally abuse him in public, I said. I have an obvious weak spot since I'm an orphan, so she could use her connections to try and ruin my foster placement here. That's what I'm most concerned about. Or she might be the type to try and manipulate me personally, or manipulate her daughter into bullying me. We do a lot of business with her family, Granny said. You're an apple now, and I'm sure she knows better than that to go after one of ours. I technically wasn't an apple yet, but I appreciated the sentiment. She'll act subtly then, I said. Or as subtle as she can manage. The way she's been acting, she's either very stupid, or she knows no pony can stop her and likes to flaunt it. I heard hoofsteps from the stairs, and turned to see Applejack enter the kitchen. Morning, Granny, said Applejack. You look a mite angry, Sweet Pea. Is everything all right? Spoiled Rich, I said. What can you tell me about her? Well, to be honest, she's a bit stuck up, Applejack said. But I don't think she's evil or nothing. Who are her friends? I probed. Who will take her side if she's accused of wrongdoing? Young Green is worried about what Spoiled Rich will do to her once she tells on her, said Granny.
Oh, I think you need to stop worrying yourself over things that haven't happened yet,
said Applejack.
You should just let the adults worry about this. I'll be here to protect you no matter what. No pony else will take this seriously!
I stomped my hoof.
They'll treat this as a one-off incident. They won't notice the pattern of abuse, they won't see the psychotic glee she takes in making other ponies feel powerless and miserable, and I'll be left watching my back, waiting for the moment she senses an opportunity to stab me.
Applejack sighed. Applebloom entered the kitchen, giving enough of an excuse to break off the conversation.
I'll talk about it later, not now. I have to go to school this morning, and I don't want to spend all day thinking about this.
I wore my saddlebags to school, but left the hat at home. It was funny to think that those were the only 2 pieces of clothing I had to choose from. When we arrived at school, thankfully without a big sister escort, I was surprised to see a familiar face.
Amy?
The purple stallion was a little taller and thinner than Shirley, but with more defined muscles. Next to Big Macintosh, he looked almost emancipated. But few ponies could match Mac's Clydesdale-like build.
You know the stallion?
Asked Applebloom.
Yeah.
I said.
He was one of the nurses that looked after me in the hospital.
He looked around somewhat awkwardly until he spotted me and waved. Was he the minder that Dayglow had promised me?
Hey, Green,
said Amethyst.
I'm here to help you out at school today, so just let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll just be watching. But I mean, not in a weird way.
I'd been practicing raising one eyebrow, and decided now was as good a time as any to try it out.
Supervising,
said Amethyst.
I meant supervising, not watching. How will you supervise without watching?
I asked. I let the question hang for a moment, before laughing and rearing up to put a hoof on his shoulder.
Relax, Amy,
I said.
I'm joking. I knew that,
said Amy, defensively.
What are you doing here?
I'm here to take care of you.
No, I mean, you're training to be a nurse.
I said.
Why are you working as a teacher's aide?
Oh, some ponies don't realize, but there's actually a lot more jobs nurses do than just working in hospitals. Amethyst explained. This type of job will help teach community nursing skills.
That's not what a community nurse does.
I almost corrected him before remembering. Different world, different rules.
Oh, alright then.
The rest of the Crusaders and Pip approached us, and Amy tried to step back to let us speak amongst ourselves, but I moved closer to him again. We'd barely made introductions when we heard Diamond Tiara trying to get every pony's attention.
Every pony?
Diamond spoke from the schoolhouse steps.
There's something you should know about your student pony president.
The students turned to look at her, some with undisguised looks of contempt. I almost felt sorry for her.
Pipsqueak promised you all that if you voted for him, he would have the playground rebuilt.
Diamond continued.
But he lied! He can't afford to have a playground rebuilt. He should be impeached. What do you have to say to all the ponies you lied to, student pony president?
Diamond Tiara was grinning, as if she'd made a point. I nudged Pip.
Remember what we discussed. You're running a fundraiser.
Pip looked unsure of himself.
It's all right. We'll come with you, and I'll tell you what to say.
Having Amethyst next to me made it much less frightening to get up on the steps with Diamond Tiara, although I may still have been hiding behind him a little.
Who's this? Your nanny?
Said Diamond Tiara. Amethyst gave her a disapproving look.
He's my bodyguard.
I explained.
What, your parents can't afford a bodyguard?
The crowd was murmuring now as they waited for Pip to address them. I whispered in his ear.
My fellow ponies, I promised you a new playground, and we will have a new playground,
said Pip.
Today, I promise that you will also have cake. Diamond doesn't know this, but we're planning a bake sale to raise funds for the new playground equipment.
I spoke into Pip's ear again.
There will be games, there will be cake, and we will have a new playground.
There was cheering and hoof stomping. Diamond Tiara bumped me as she passed.
This is not over,
she hissed.
Honestly, God, what a fucking bitch.
I shouldn't say that. Anywho, let's get on to our golden donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, Star 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and IronSky. Matchfuck 109, JockeTF, Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel, Sky, Salson, Rolan, Stu, Hexter, Brother Mordred, Omicron, Library, Rinse, 9852, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Rice, Soul, Shadow, Moon, Luigi 88, Chance Request, Pig Smoke 369, Bob, JJ, Murder Princess, J1101, Calidus, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.